Welcome to the show, everybody. Today, I want to cover a topic that's near and dear to me as, a father of three children, as well as a chiropractor that works with health and joint pain and chronic diseases as well, right? I give a lot of my patients advice on every day, every single visit on how to get healthier, to keep down inflammation, because inflammation, as you know, from watching these podcasts, is related to pain and suffering and even lung conditions and a lot of the conditions that are haunting us today. So today I want to get into childhood obesity. It's becoming a bigger problem, and we seem to be making some small efforts in this area. When I talk to my patients, you think about all the number of personal trainers. I mean, the young children that are involved in like high-end travel sports, like my kids are. They have personal trainers to build their skill sets up and tweak their diets. And you think there'd be more, in things going on in the schools for this, but we're going to get into that a little bit as well. But the first thing I want to talk about is, where is this coming from? When I was a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, a couple of things were very different. One of them was there weren't really video games. So we had something called Pong. Anybody that's around my age kind of laugh when they hear about Pong, because it was basically like this strange little tennis game that you plugged into the back of your television, and you had two paddles, and you just bounced this ball back and forth, and you try to get it in like a goal, almost like it was a hockey goal. And, after about an hour of that, it's kind of got boring. You can speed it up. You can make your paddle smaller. And that was about it, right? After that, it was all about being outside, right? We played games outside that were physical. They were dangerous. We got injured, broken bones, permanent scars. I picked gravel out of my friends' foreheads multiple times as we buried our faces in the tar and in the dirt. And I'm not suggesting that kind of play is a great idea, but it's better, in my opinion, than the sedentary, toxic life that I'm seeing today with a lot of kids. I have children in my office that come in with six packs and bulging muscle, and they're in high-end sports. And then I have kids that come in and they're gamers, let's say, and that's it. And their physical body is a disaster area. And it's sad. I thought, well, where are the normal kids? In my childhood, there was, I would say, one obese child on my block. We probably had about 30 kids if we put together the around the block guys we hung out with. And on my street, I lived in a very condensed suburb of Buffalo. So there were houses, separated by driveways, and that's it. And, people had 3, 4, 5. Across the street were 7 kids. Around the block were 16 kids. Unbelievable family. My whole block played their family in football. And, it was tackle football without equipment. People got hurt, right? But the physical side, and this can, I'm not suggesting that, but how physical we were, how much time we spent outside, the amount of things we did to entertain ourselves. Recently, I ran across an article, I think it was Men's Health, and it talked about how to get a workout outside in the forest, how to pick up a rock, lunge up and down a hill. So it was hiking with some added resistance, different things you can do to give yourself a full body workout just out in the forest. And I thought, that's kind of what my childhood was like. We had this field where there were rocks, and we would try to dig up the biggest rock and see how far somebody can throw it. My friends are very competitive. I was very competitive, and we had a great time. We were outside in the sunshine doing things. Now, that environment, I wish it could come back. And to some degree, I've seen it come back. I pushed it in my area, and my neighbors felt the same way I did here where I currently live. So my kids were out a lot. I was out there with them. We played everything imaginable. Sidewalk chalk was probably the calmest thing, then water balloons and, everything imaginable outside, because all the parents knew that these kids are going to get more and more involved with the smartphone as it was coming about right around that era and everything else. So the emphasis to be outside, it needs to be pushed today for childhood obesity. And in my day, it was easy. That was our entertainment. People, they did not have, most of the families didn't have 2 cars. So if I wanted to go somewhere, I had to get on my bike and ride, or I'd walk. I'd, catch a friend and we'd say, let's walk to the park. The park was about 1.5 miles away. You got there, you played crazy stuff, then you walked back. And, or if you knew somebody on the other side of town, you wanted to go hang out with them, you got on your bike and you traveled through, traffic and craziness, gave you some good survival skills. But, once again, out in the sun, fresh air, all that kind of stuff. So with this in mind, let's take a look at some of the obesity stats we have today. Now, right now, adults, 73% of adults are obese. 73%. That number is unbelievable, right? I mean, 70% of the population in the United States is considered obese. That is a serious problem from a health standpoint. And if you look at children, we have 36% of children, and it comes in different groups. Let's look at it, breaks down by race and socioeconomic. So if you are, the average kid right now, 19.3% of the children are obese. Now let's go look at Hispanic, 25.6% of the children are obese in this country. African American, 24.2% of the children. White children, 16.1%, Asian, 8.7%. So you can see that there may be a socioeconomic situation here. And if you look at some of those factors, the availability of food. Are you able to get to a supermarket and carry home 5 bags of vegetables? Maybe not. What is your access to fast food in different neighborhoods and growing up in different environments? Do you have 2 parents at home cooking food and sharing the load of raising the children? So the socioeconomic status on this is very real. And so we're left to maybe the schools to help out with some of the better meals for these children. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well. But let's look at the effects. What you see is if a child is obese, their likelihood of becoming morbidly obese as an adult is incredibly high. So they start out, they're considered obese, and as they age, that doesn't seem to change. It's almost as if the habit or the body gets stuck in this state, and it just worsens. I mean, the average person gains 20 pounds every year after high school. So, if at your 20-year reunion, you're 20 pounds overweight, let's say, and you take an obese child, and that is magnified by at least double. So we have to get after this immediately to break these habits and get kids to be more active, making smarter choices. We're going to get into some of that. But here are the effects. Diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. This is in children. Poor self-esteem, depression, and this social stigma of being obese. You think about, just go on any of the social media sites and look how thin some of the people are and how beautiful they are. And kids, look like that or want to be like that. And the social pressures of trying to look like that is crazy. Immune system problems, autoimmune diseases, allergies, problems that are really a big problem right now during this pandemic. Joint pain, just the overload on the joints. People's joints are meant to hold the weight of their optimum body mass. You start adding 20, 30 pounds to that, and you have compression on the knees and the hips and the back, and you have more pain, which leads to further inactivity, more medication. So the causes, if you look at this, and respiratory issues is another one. The causes, the simple thing would be too little activity. We talked about, the differences in my childhood versus the childhood of a lot of young kids today as far as activity. One of the things we talk about is, empty calories. What's an empty calorie? An empty calorie is a calorie that you've eaten that doesn't have anything else valuable with it. If you're eating a healthy food, you're having all the phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, carotenoids, all the great stuff that's found in healthy food, along with the calorie. But if you're eating a Twinkie, right, what are you getting? You're getting, preservatives, colorings, and sugar, some grain. So the calorie is, in a sense, a waste of time. All it's going to do is add weight to your body. You're not going to get the benefits outside of that. Family stress is one of the causes they found. A lot of families, the key here is to eat when you're stressed. And that's something you can unfortunately teach your children. You're having a bad day, sit down, let's grab something to eat. We're going to celebrate, it's your birthday, so here we go with, this kind of thing. And before you know it, food becomes this social engaging thing. Now, I had that in my childhood. We grew up in an Italian family, so you had pretty much, everything was related to food. And, I enjoyed that, but there weren't a lot of snacks around, and we were so active that we burned most of that out. And most of that food was pretty healthy. By today's standards, by today's, choices, the food was way healthier. It was, better more vegetable content, believe it or not. There were exceptions, of course. We had cannolis, so what are you going to do? Um, we talked about the socioeconomic cause a second ago. Access to quality food is a big one. And when you look at education, let's take the parents, for example. The more educated a person is, the less obese they are and the less medication they're on, which makes you wonder, like, I'm not sure why that's the case. Maybe people go to the doctors and don't question the amount of drugs that that they're willing to prescribe. Good meaning doctors saying, well, here's an answer, here's a quick answer. Maybe the doctor knows that this patient isn't going to follow through with a lot of suggestions, and medications all they can come up with. But it's a sad thing to see. If you go into certain neighborhoods, you can see the difference in obesity, just people walking down the street. And I see that in my own practice. We do whatever we can to suggest options to get that out of the way. Another cause is simply medication. So if you're more medicated, most medications do not have you lose weight. Ask anyone that's been on prednisone and a lot of other antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, and which are rampantly given to kids, sometimes for very good reason, don't get me wrong. But you got to limit this as well, because prednisone will leave you heavy. It's an exhausting medication. I could say that my life was saved by prednisone, right? I had asthma and bronchitis and pneumonia, and I had such a bad case of pneumonia. If it wasn't for the prednisone, I wouldn't be alive. So, hey, there's a use, right? But overprescribing this or not changing your health issues. My issues were related to gluten intolerance, and I was around a 2.5 to 3 pack a day smoker in my house, and I just wasn't very tolerant of that kind of. I couldn't tolerate that kind of smoke in the house. It appears, and put all that together, and I had issues with my lungs. But I conditioned my lungs by being outside playing, so kind of didn't end up on prednisone more than maybe twice in my childhood. And I see today, many kids on that, just repetitiously. But, if we're going to stop this, here's something interesting. In an effort to keep our kids safe during COVID, we did a lot of things, right? Masking, shelter in place, the lockdowns, stopping social engagement, closing playgrounds, closing gyms. And, right from the beginning, I saw a big problem with that strategy. I understood where it came from, but at the same time, I disagreed with it. And it's not, it's never a popular thing to disagree with the narrative today. But I think time's going to really show you some of the big mistakes we've made in doing so. So I found a study that they did recently, and this is Journal of American Medical Association. And it's, 2020's last 18 months, there has been a 23% increase in childhood obesity. That's staggering. We had a problem before. Now we have a serious problem. 23% increase in childhood obesity. That comes out to about a 5-pound gain in a child. So imagine if you're 50 pounds, you gain 5 pounds. That's a lot of extra weight on a body. And you add that to the stresses that are going on in our kids' lives, and you have a real problem, which then oftentimes the solution seems to lead to drugs. So you throw inactivity, comfort foods in with high stress, and you have a recipe for disaster. And like I said earlier, if a child is obese, their likelihood of becoming morbidly obese as an adult, which brings on all these health conditions that I mentioned a second ago, is just crazy. So what I'm asking people to do is just take a good look at this. And we're going to look at some possible suggestions, things we can do and take a look at to try to slow this down, because we're in a time where you hope we can bounce back as far as childhood obesity that the current strategy has caused, but we have this thing called recidivism, where you hang on to your bad habits, and you pay a price for those habits. And so far, childhood obesity has done that over time. It's done that before any kind of restrictions. But let's look at some prevention stuff. Let's get off the negativity here, because it's obviously a sad thing. There's a lot of stuff we can do. First off, as parents, set a good example. My kids, one time I overheard them talking, and I thought that I must be doing something right, because my one daughter, when she was really young, said, Dad's old. Dad's like old. Like, how long has he got left? And this is probably about 5 years ago. And I was around the corner, and my older daughter said, "Oh, Dad, he drinks and eats that green goopy stuff, and he does nothing but run around all the time. He's always lifting weights. He's going to be around a long time." And I thought, well, isn't this great? They're able to associate the fact that I am probably going to live longer than average, and because of my green goop that I eat, that was my smoothies, and the vegetables and the running around stuff that I do, right? So I set a good example, and I'm asking as parents to set the best example you can. Be active, get outside, show, if you're just a burping sofa, your kids may model that, and that's a problem, okay? Eating slowly. One of the things, there's a book called The Slow Down Diet, and it had something to do with French women not being overweight, and that the French ate extremely slowly. They had 2-hour lunches, I believe, if I remember when I read this book about 6-7 years ago. And I thought, that's interesting. So simply eating slower. Well, a lot of you may know that if you eat slow, you fill up. And if you eat fast, your body doesn't know it's full until it's overpacked. Think of the Thanksgiving. You have all this great food, you stuff yourself, and you're full. And then like 20 minutes later, you feel stuffed because that satiation reflex kicks in, and you're like, wow, now I've really done a number on myself, right? So, and as far as the diets out there, if you've seen other podcasts, I try to keep it simple. Eat real food. Plants are real food. Meat is real food. Grains have been altered, and dairy products are meant to turn a calf into a cow. And what's a cow? A cow's pretty heavy. It's big. It's anabolic, right? So when you look at carbohydrate, protein, fat in food, and you measure all that, that's pretty interesting. If you just count calories, interesting. If you look at simply just keeping the carbohydrates low, that seems to work, especially if it's plain sugar that you're ingesting and you're getting rid of that out of your diet, but getting rid of pop or something and you lose 20 pounds. I have patients doing that all the time. That's all great. But when you eat a plate of food, what is its biological purpose? And I've said this before, and it's worth repeating. The biological purpose of an apple is to grow a tree. It has seeds in there, and it has a carbohydrate base. It works its way into the ground, and all of a sudden you have another apple tree. Pretty powerful food, grows a whole tree with a little bit of sunshine and water, obviously, after that. But milk is meant to turn a calf into a cow. So as a human, we're one of the few species that drinks the milk of another species. That's kind of breaking some rules. And what do we know about nature? You break rules, you will pay a price every single time. Medical interventions, strange behaviors, oddities outside of what leads to life. These things tend to cause problems socially and physically because you're breaking some basic laws that are, hundreds of thousands of years old. But, so I'm pretty much a plant-based protein eater. So in other words, lots of fruits and vegetables and a fair amount of meat. And that's it. The grains and dairy products are not part of my diet. They might sneak in, 10%, 5% here and there. But I'm pretty much away from those. And it's served me really well. I'm never hungry. And I've been able to maintain a really great body weight. One of the things, also another preventative strategy or something introduced to slow down childhood obesity would be to introduce new foods. My wife has this great thing called a no thank you bite. And I never heard of that. I'm not sure where she got it. I didn't grow up with that one. But it means, okay, you're going to take this bite. You're going to try this food. And then you're going to say, well, no, thank you. In other words, I don't like that. Because what it does is it gives the child a chance to try something. Because sometimes things look terrible and they taste good. So if a child gets a chance and you play this game like, okay, well, you're taking a no thank you bite. Let's go. And you just put it in there and you're welcome to say no thank you. Like, you really don't like that. We're not going to stuff you with it. We're not going to force you to eat it. We're going to encourage it if it's reasonable. But at the same time, at least, okay, you tried a new food. You can't just look at it and smell it and tell us it's not good enough. You're going to give it a no thank you bite. I like that. I like that idea. Non-food rewards, rewarding, like I said earlier, even though this was not part of my childhood, we were rewarded with food. Rewarding kids with food, is a pretty horrible idea because they associate the food then in the future with a way of celebration and a way of mourning. You had a bad day, let's go get an ice cream. You just, hit a ball out of the park, let's get an ice cream. Avoid those behaviors as much as possible so you don't set up that kind of correlation. We said earlier, get outside. Now, one of the things I didn't mention is, and you may know this from another podcast, but outdoor air is 5 times less polluted than indoor air. Why is indoor air polluted? Well, it's recirculating all the outgassing of all the products in your house, your carpet, all of the furniture, the paint, and the different dusts and molds and pollens that could be blown around in through your ventilation system. There's mold in most houses, especially older houses. And that stuff is all taxing to your body. When you get outside, you have that clean air and you're breathing in the seasonal pollens, which may cause some people to sneeze, but if they're taking good care of themselves, that'll be less so. If you're eating a good diet and you have less allergies, you'll be much more adapted to the outside. But you're going to get vitamin D out there. One of my favorite things, as most people understand from watching these, vitamin D is crucial. Making that on your skin, very important. So when you're outside, you're breathing fresh air, you're making vitamin D, and the sun is probably responsible for hundreds of other amazing reactions when it gets in your eyes and stimulates that day-night cycle. Let's look at that, sleep, right? And if you get out in bright light, your body says it's daytime, and then the sun goes down, you get in your house, and you keep the lights down, your body says it's nighttime. So what does that do? It cues sleep. So it works with the melatonin in your body, the natural melatonin that your body makes. And it sets up this day-night cycle. So when you do lay down to sleep, you fall asleep and you stay asleep because you have this great day-night situation, best way to do it. School lunch programs. Now that's something that when I first sent my daughter off to school, we had such a healthy house and we'd see some of the stuff. And, we packed her lunch. She brought her own lunch often, but there were times where, that maybe wasn't practical. Or I just saw what the other kids were eating at lunch and I was amazed. But I think there's a lot of room in that for improvement. Just because little Johnny or Mary doesn't like, to eat her green beans or his green beans, too bad, to be honest with you. I mean, here you are at lunch. We're talking about big issues, diabetes, heart disease. We're talking about, somebody getting morbidly obese as an adult. We want to make sure that these kids are given opportunities at school for healthy foods. And I know there have been, different presidents and first ladies that have put out some effort for this, and and it's made some changes. But it needs to be tightened up again because we're dealing with serious problems here. We're dealing with serious health issues, and kids having these options, to eat these horrifying foods at school, it's got to end, right? So changing that. One of the ways of looking at it also is the minimum and maximum amounts of food that a child is given at school. Certainly don't want to starve kids out. They need to concentrate. If they're athletic, they're going to need a little more food. But reasonable portion sizes, something that maybe should be studied properly, is like how much food does this person need to sustain themselves? So you eat too much food, your blood sugar goes up, it comes down, and when your blood sugar comes down, you can't think. You're going to get sleepy. You'll fall asleep in class, or you won't be at the right carbohydrate zone for the sports you're playing afterwards. All this stuff needs to be considered. It creates mood disorders as well to have up and down blood sugar, glycemic index. So and enough time to eat. We talked about slow down diet. Like, let's look at the school lunch program. I mean, how stressful is the environment that you're eating, and how much time do you have? Now, I had a lot of time to eat in my school lunch programs, and I brought my lunch most of the time. But, it certainly wasn't a stressless environment. There were food fights and all sorts of, hierarchies of popularity and, the usual stuff in a high school that, lunchroom was kind of a tyrannical place. But if we can avoid that or change that up a little bit, that would be a great idea, a more peaceful setting, maybe some music, maybe some better lighting. I'm not sure. But, an idea where that's a better environment for anybody out there that has any control over those situations, or any parents that want to bring that up at a board meeting, school board meeting. I think that'd be a great idea because, just making kids happy with food that doesn't give them good nutrition is not the goal here. The goal is to, split the difference between that's a tasty food and it's extremely healthy, because we have to do something, right? Things are gotten out of hand. So what I'm saying today is that childhood obesity has gotten out of hand. We have a 23% increase in childhood obesity since the pandemic started, with some of the strategies of locking kids down, socially isolating them. And that is leading to diseases that also make them more prone to worse outcomes if they do get COVID. And it's the last thing we want. So getting after that, making sure that we have a respect for the great outdoors and keeping our bodies moving, I think is crucial. Quantity, quality of food, peaceful environments, and enough good nutrients in that food to sustain children and get them going, because we have time to do this. I mean, this is the time to do it. As things keep getting worse, we got to fight back, and we got to bring things back to a better normality for our children, so they can be healthy adults, take the stress off the healthcare system, and continue to promote this kind of thing. So, hey, if you like these videos, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I always give suggestions. Love to hear what's on your mind, what you want to hear more of. But for today, follow these suggestions. You'll be able to find this in the links, and let's all live a healthy, happier life. Thanks.